Welcome to Squatch-D TV, where the truth is first before all else. Join your hosts, veteran investigator, TV personality, and author Steve Kulls, and from the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Project and the Kentucky Fried Fixes channel, Chris Bennett. Sit back and prepare to take yourself on a journey with the longest-running Bigfoot podcast, Squatch-D TV. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, March 24th, 2024. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with my co-host right down there, Mr. Chris Bennett. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good to see you, man. Enjoying the warm weather.
Brother.
I'll tell you what, sound like to me you guys had a little white stuff going on up there. What's going on in New York?
Mother Nature mugged us.
Oh, no.
He mugged us, took all our money out of our pockets, rolled us for our watches, rolled us for our phones, and took off in the promise of spring.
That's terrible, man. I hate to tell you that, but we've been enjoying t-shirt weather, and it's been nice.
20 inches of snow yesterday.
Oh, my God. Oh, dude,
20 flipping inches.
You're going to break out the old sled and do some sledding here.
Even the Bronco had the Bronco had a problem because my driveway got plowed in.
Yeah.
So when you put 2 feet of snow, basically, and you plow it, now it becomes 3 feet of snow. Yeah. But the Bronco got out.
Well, good.
Took a little finagling, a little bit of hot water under the wheels to melt some of that snow buildup, and we got her out. And we got to the store yesterday, just like we always do.
Oh yeah, man. Next thing you're gonna do is just put a lift kit under that Bronco, raise her up about 4 feet off the ground where you got to have a step ladder to climb in.
Yeah, no. But hey, the neck is still did actually really well today, but it still has its cranky moments, and it's
I figured with this weather being in there like it is, the changes in the weather would probably really inflame it.
Or not, the cold actually feels better than the warmth. And like yesterday, I was outside trying to back it up, and I was brushing my car off very gingerly, obviously. Had to do what I had to do.
Right.
And believe it or not, my neck was like, wow, that feels pretty good. But the minute I got indoors to the heat, I was like, oh, yeah. And like right now, it's bothering me a little bit. But
maybe the cold air is kind of reducing some of that inflammation while you're outside.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. But it is what it is. Today, not too bad. Of course, I've been having a relatively docile day, not sitting in a chair too much, just kind of in the recliner most of the day doing stuff. But it is what it is, and I can't stay still too sedentary because then I get very depressed about that.
Are you wearing a KISS t-shirt?
I certainly am.
All right, come in there. Oh yes, Scott, if you're watching, I guarantee you Scott loves that. He's a great big KISS fan. Me too. I love KISS, but it's been an interesting weekend though. Yeah, we've had to do some. We're getting pretty crowded over in some of the research areas, so I had to go to a few that nobody knows about right now.
And hello to Jeff down there.
Jeff, good to see you, bud.
Thanks for having me.
We're gonna have some fun tonight. We got to keep. With all the bullshine that we go through in the course of our research careers, because we're advocates more or less. We end up having our fair share of fun and games. But I digress. We have a task to do, Chris, and you know what that is.
It is time for the roll call in the chat. Golly, the chat is hopping because I've had to scroll up 5,000 miles here, it looks like.
Yep, and guess who wasn't in first today? In fact, I don't see him.
Lester.
Not Lester Taylor.
Where are you?
Lester is AWOL.
Goodness. I'm worried about Lester. He's usually always in early. But Not that we don't appreciate Daniel Weeks being first in the chat today.
Yes.
I can see
Daniel. Hello, Daniel. Relic Hominin. We'll be catching the
Relic.
show tomorrow morning.
Catch
Good
you on
to
the
see you,
replay,
Relic,
bud.
as well.
Yeah.
Our good friend Pat Collins, again,
Yeah.
who is lives in the same county as I do.
2 feet.
Yeah, and mind you, he's not being very nice to the little groundhog.
Yeah. The little beastie has lied to you. Pat, I'm sorry.
Walter Kroll, who reminded Lester that his streak has ended. Get your chair.
Walter.
And
Oh, gosh.
Jay is out there. Happy birthday.
Okay. Welcome,
Happy
Jay.
birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
There's John, Sasquatch Wizard, and Ryan Dax, Don Gumow Jr. Good to see you. Risto, hello. Walter Kroll, hello. B. Lynn. There's our bouncer. She's in the house. Sharon, good to see you. Gary Johnson, Senior, good to see you. Jay Fritz, hello, my friend.
Hey,
Don Fuller. Dang, I wanted to be first.
Welcome, Don.
Who else we got going there? I see Sandra Piper. Hello, Sandra. Good to see you.
Okay, I'm going to put my glasses on.
Oh, our bouncer's not going to be able to chat. Well, it's okay. I can bounce tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right, B. We appreciate
There's
you.
Jeremiah from the Bigfoot Society. Good to see you. Henry May. Henry was just on Nikki's show. And we're going to get Henry on. I think we're going to get him on real soon, too. So we're going to have him lined up as well.
Love talking to Henry.
Yep. Outback Orchard. There he is. Good to see you.
Orchard.
Hey, there's my old buddy, Steve Kellerman. Hello, Steve. Good to see you.
Welcome.
And Jeff D. Smith in the house.
Jeff D. Welcome. Good to see you.
Dale Mills,
Dale,
New Hampshire in the house. Good to see you. Good to see New Hampshire
representing New Hampshire. Yeah.
Same with Blake Burrows. Good to see you, Blake. Tom Conley, hello, sir. Good to see you. Robert Denduven, hello.
Robert, welcome.
Old Spirit Art, hello. Good to see you. Brian Barber, there's Brian.
Hey,
DM Zabo, hello. Eltern, aka Faster Man. Of course,
good to see you.
It's good to see all you guys. And Angel Nolan also here.
Angel?
Russ Torcola is in the house. Good to see you again, Russ.
Russ? I'm lost. I always do this. I always get
pretty
lost.
Fast. The Sandwich Savant. It's finally Sunday.
That's great. I love it.
There's Nikki, who had a great show on Pareidolia with Bill Rigby.
Cool.
And Henry May. And Finding the Trackway made it over there as well. Bill, good to see you. And made a platypus joke over there.
Yeah.
He made a platypus joke. He doesn't get the Ralph for that one, but he does get the gong. But he does get the gong.
That's good.
Well, I think we said Walter Kroll. Sorry, there was Russ. I'm trying to catch up because when I switched around, Martin McTighe, good to see you, Martin. Good to see you.
Welcome.
And there's Mick. Mick is in the house. So that ends that.
I think we got everybody, but if we didn't get everybody, it ain't because we don't love you. This chat is hopping.
Because we're old and getting blind.
Yeah. I've got my glasses here, but I'm a little embarrassed to use them in front of you guys.
So, okay. Let's start the show. Yes, I've been busy working on the soundboard again today.
Steve will be playing with the soundboard tonight.
No. Do too much.
Ah, wait a minute. There's Buttworm. Welcome, Buttworm.
Buttworm. Gotta love that name.
What a name. Yeah. That's something. All right. Classics there. Beethoven's Fifth, right?
Who is Buttworm? inquiring minds like us want to know. Anyway, Jeff, how you been, brother?
I'm hanging in there. I'm ready. It's one of my favorite times of year when everything starts coming alive again,
Not under 2 feet of snow.
Well, where I am right on that freeze line to where my home here in South Dakota is all rain today. And if you just go about 30 miles north, definitely go far enough north up where the lake home is. They've got 12 inches of snow up there today, and tomorrow they're going to get 10 more. So
they're catching up to us.
And instead, we've just got about the same equivalent in rain, which is about 1 3/4 inches of rain is about the same as 2 feet of snow. So
very cold weather in South Dakota and North Dakota.
Well, last night it was in the single digits here. It went down to 9 degrees.
Yeah.
You guys need to get south.
Tonight it's 6 here, and then tomorrow night the overnight night low is 6. And then the end of the midweek, the end of the week, Thursday and Friday, we're back into the upper 50s fishing out of the boat again. So the nice thing here is we had about 2 weeks of 50, 60, even 70 degree weather to where that ground did start thawing. So this snow just doesn't last that long. It hits the ground and it builds up 5-6 inches and starts melting back down right away again. But
I'm hoping by the end of the week it's gone, because starting like Wednesday we start getting into the 50s again. The next few days we're getting up. Tomorrow I think it's getting up into the 40s. Tuesday it'll be in the 40s. Wednesday it'll be in the 50s, and then back into the very high 40s for Thursday, Friday, and I think it's back into the 50s for next weekend. So hopefully we'll be pretty good. And it's supposed to rain a little bit on Wednesday, which will again take some of that snow away. So hopefully by the end of the week most of this will be gone. But it's pretty amazing because Daryl, our Sasquatch out in front of the house, he sits on a stump, and the snow was high as almost his waist. So we had snow over the stump and up to his like high thighs.
It's pretty cool.
And so Daryl's been keeping watch. Thank goodness snow doesn't really bother him too much. But I wonder what it does. I wonder what's going through the minds of animals during this time. Like, here it is. Oh, it's spring, and all of a sudden they get this, and it's like, what the hell?
Right. Yeah.
It's so inconsistent.
Yep.
Well, it's really tough on the trees and stuff too, because when they start budding out and they've got those nice tender young buds, and then you get a hard freeze after that.
Yeah.
Then they got to start all over.
But here's the amazing thing is that where I live, I think the biggest storm we had in my little town, I think we had maybe 12, 14 inches. And that was the entire winter. I think we got one big snowstorm. And then the rest of the year was maybe 1 inch, maybe 2 inches, 3 inches at most. And then all of a sudden, here it is, second day of spring, and we get dumped with almost 2 feet of snow.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Back 2013, we got like 12, 14 inches of snow in Kentucky, and it shut the entire state down. It's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world.
Well, you go to Virginia, they get 1/4 of an inch, it shuts the whole state down.
This is the time of year that it is really interesting to see your Facebook memories from like 7 years ago and 9 years ago. Because it's like this for us this time of year in these areas where we get all 4 seasons, it is really inconsistent sometimes in these
all the time.
Right.
I'm looking at it says 7 years ago today, it was like I was complaining about how we had a foot of snow out in the driveway after minute. And then like 9 years ago today, we were outside in t-shirts, throwing the frisbee around. It's like
my birthday is on January 27th. It was almost a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Very cold weather, always cold. And the funny thing is that I think prior to like 1998, I'm thinking that's the Super Bowl weekend. Usually sometimes my birthday was on the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because then they added a division or something, and they added a wild card is what they did.
Yeah.
And then it extended the playoffs another week, so it pushed the Super Bowl into February. But I remember, every so often, including this year, I was walking around outside in a t-shirt on my birthday, January 27th. It was in the high 40s, low 50s. I was walking around just fine. And some years it'd be snow on the ground. Some years it would be sunny. Like you said, never consistent. You never know what you're going to get at what time of year.
But there are certain things that, regardless of what's on the ground, still happen at the same time. We were just talking before the show here about how in my area, I have a unusually large number of bobcats in my area this year. And starting about that second week of February, those females come into heat, and it lasts about 5 or 6 weeks. And if you were to go outside right now in the dark and just howl, you give it about 3 or 4 minutes and it'll sound like a woman's being murdered next to you. I mean, it is crazy, the sounds they make. But whether there's a foot of snow or whether it's 70 degrees, they're still starting that the same week every year, you know?
You know what's even more fun to do this time of year in your area, Jeff?
What's that?
Is wear the catnip sweater and run for the woods.
Yeah.
Pass. Yeah, those bobcats, man. When it comes in time to be in breeding season, where the females are coming in heat, and you go out in the woods, you're going to hear it sounds like death and murder out in the woods. You know.
Yeah.
Really, really, really scary sounds when those things get hooked up.
Well, it's the different sounds of when a female's in heat and she's not with a male, the screaming, sustained sounds that she'll make trying to attract one. A female's range is about 6 miles is all. A male bobcat's range is about 60 miles. And, you get a female doing that and you get more than one male showing up and they start jockeying for position, they make a whole different sound.
Yeah.
I mean, that when they start squaring off, it's like, holy shit, it's going down, But the haunting, sustained screams that just a lone female makes it's almost, to stand out on the deck, you can listen to it and be like, wow, man, that's really cool. She'll do it for about 8-10 seconds long, and then she'll wait a minute and do it again. But when you get two males going at it out there, it's like you feel like running for cover. Like I don't want to have anything to do with this.
Right.
But
so, in case a lot of people have caught the title of the show, the theme of tonight's show is all the stuff you should hear but don't. And I want to start off, and then I'm gonna sashay into Jeff's feelings about this, but it's very bizarre. I first and foremost do not consider myself a YouTuber. That's secondary to what I do. Right. What I do is I try to convey the most truthful, convincing information, and Jeff does the same. And to the extent the YouTube channels I hang with do essentially the same type of business. We try to put analysis, fact, science, while debunking pseudoscience and hoaxing, and evaluating, potential evidence that's either put out there as a result of a misidentification or whatnot. And I've read a lot of comments over the last couple of years and stuff, not necessarily at this channel, but in YouTube in general. And, I see people saying, well, they put music to some of their stuff, and, they seem more involved with production than they do content. Well, like I said, I'm a researcher first, but I am a YouTuber as well. And there's a reason why at least our stuff may have a nice, catchy thumbnail. It may have some background music. It may have some of your typical YouTube formula stuff in, because it won't do any good if I put a video out there and it gets watched by 20 people, is it? Because from 2006, when I started this YouTube channel, and I had another YouTube channel as well, from 2006 through 2019, I may have gotten 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10,000 views on the channel. Right? Nobody is, I mean, people are watching, but not as many as we'd like to watch. Yeah. Now we've upped our production. Now we've upped, our methodology as far as production value. And that's a whole nother skill set of its own. But the other thing is it gives me practice for doing what I really want to do, and that's doing Bigfoot documentaries.
Yeah.
And presenting material that's real, presenting material that's straightforward. And even though it's not exciting, we can put it in the truthful context and still make it interesting for people to be captivated and watch, even though we may be saying, hey, this is not Bigfoot, or we didn't see Bigfoot in this particular event, but making it interesting enough for people to still stay in tune with what's going on to see what's coming next. That being said, again, I don't want to get away from the fact that our major mission here is first and foremost the truth. And what say you, Jeff? What are your thoughts on all of that and all of what's been going on in the YouTube world?
Well, I think whether or not you're here for the purpose of bringing forth, genuine research effort and sharing it and inspiring others with what you're doing and what your results are, or whether or not you're just here to entertain, marketing is always going to be crucial. I mean, first of all, you look at the money that's involved in this. We can go make more money working at Taco Bell than we can running a YouTube channel. Okay, that's just the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, we're here because we're passionate about the subject, and we are also passionate about helping others find real answers, or at least find a way to search for those answers that's not misleading, that's not going to get you more lost in this community, which a lot of channels will do that. So I hope people don't look at the production that's involved and assume that means this is entertainment. It's the production has to be there, whether or not you're a Jeff Meldrum or a Todd Standing. You still better have production, So,
right? Yeah, exactly. And that's not being said. There is a fair amount of channels. In fact, most of the channels that are on Bigfoot and YouTube are dedicated to. Oh, hang on a second. Hello, Jimbo. Welcome. And let me do a shout out to David Gray.
David.
David was wishing me well with my neck. And then a week later, David got into a accident.
Oh, no. Man.
Actually rolled his vehicle.
Mm.
And he's dealing with some really serious issues.
Oh, I can imagine.
With the shoulder. So, David, on behalf of us, we want to wish you the best, and we're hoping to see you out in the field.
Get well soon.
David's local to me, and David is going to be coming on to the field team. But like me, him, like I said, Chris, if the three of us were out there, we'd be, all right, get your walker, I'll get my neck brace. Dave, you get your sling out, and we'll all hobble into the woods. And if a Sasquatch comes and we have to run, hopefully one of us will make it out alive.
Oh yeah, I bring a walking stick with me, so I could probably beat off a stack. Excuse me, beat a Sasquatch with my walking stick. Excuse me. That didn't come out
and he
right.
isn't far. You know, they're talking. You know, from what I understand, they're talking about surgery on the poor guy, and you know, so prayers. Thank you, team, for throwing out there the best wishes and prayers. We appreciate that. And good evening to the tackle tactician. He is just soirade in.
Welcome. Love my Kentucky guys representing.
Yep. But you know, there are so many channels dedicated to just telling stories, and they're not vetting stories, and they're pure. And a lot of them are just pure entertainment, making up stories. And I remember, and this just happened. I happened to catch my wife looking at this video because she was scrolling and she was watching the Choctaw War with Bigfoot.
Oh,
And I'm like, hold on, stop.
wow.
Turn that off. Because that is nothing but a story. That's something somebody made up, and they're having this AI voice tell it, and they're piping little music with little cartoony type of things on there. And to me, it's just so aggravating because, you know, and for some, let's face it, for some, if they want fantasy, if they want, you know, just pure, that's fine. But don't bring that fantasy to my world or to Jeff's world or to Chris's world and present it as fact.
Right.
That's
You
the
know,
big issue.
It's one of those things where I've gotten to where I don't mind being a part of a conversation when people want to discuss the possibilities of something, where those parameters may lay. And, you know, even if it's a little bit out there, I don't mind the conversation, but I think there's a lot of things that me and you share in common. And that's one of my pet peeves is somebody who can't simply present an idea or a hypothesis as a possibility rather than as a fact.
Yes.
And that is one thing that I think is hurting this community on a large scale is the amount of opinions that are presented as facts. And I think a lot of times the people who are doing it are so comfortable doing it, they don't even realize they're actually doing it that way, you know. But
and Chris knows I've been writing a lot about that too in the book.
Yeah. Well, you know, a full confession here. I do listen to some of the Bigfoot story channels, but not for research purposes, just as for entertainment.
Sure.
Right.
Now we've been putting out, Steve's been putting out a lot of the classic Bigfoot stories that originally, these are the things that intrigued others, like the Four Horsemen and stuff, to get involved in the Bigfoot research. And I do like that.
And I think that's done for, you know, historical purposes.
Right.
I want this channel to be a resource. You can go back and say, hey, you know, Mooch a lot Harry.
Right. Yeah.
You know, what's the deal with the story? Well, you can go to this channel and listen to the story verbatim. Yeah. Or you can, you know, Elikana Walker, or, you know,
classic stories were in all the books that I read back in the 70s. Okay. They're really good stuff. And, you know, that's a lot different from, I got this email today.
Yeah. I think if you look at, you know, whether or not you're a fan of his, if you look at Vic Cundiv's site, My Bigfoot Story, he features people. I was back on episode 63 or something. He's up in the 120s, I think now, but he does a lot of production, the video production and the music behind it. But it's that person who had the experience, telling the experience in their words, taking you on that journey with them. And, you know, as he's talking, you know, like as I was talking about landing on the beach on this small island on Granville Lake in Manitoba, he's showing a picture of that beach with you know, the pine trees and stuff. And so he's just giving you the visual aid to walk you along. He's not showing fake Sasquatches or anything like that in it. But you listen to something like that versus listening to Steve Isdell read an email. I mean, there's just something that's just more. The enjoyment is on a different level of listening. I just appreciate it more.
Right.
But,
Boris Kahn made too many storytelling pods where nothing is questioned, and you aren't allowed to criticize the other members or even ask questions for that matter. If you ask a question doubting some of the claims, you're banned, you're blocked. You know, your question is taken down.
We got into that years ago. I don't want to mention any names, but yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed, and I don't use this as an example in a bad way because I don't know the guy. I have never met him before. But Steve Isdell's How to Hunt channel, I noticed the other day, I think it was last week, one of the latest episodes was a Dogman encounter now, which is not his forte. I mean, he has done nothing but hunting and Bigfoot, and now all of a sudden here's this Dogman encounter story he's doing, and I'm thinking, is he turning that entertainment page to another level here?
Of course. And you know, he won't come on another show to talk about, you know, he won't come on a show as a guest.
No.
I've sent him a couple of messages over the years. He won't come on, or he ignores my messages, whatever. And that's fine. You know, some of the stuff, some of the Facebook posts I have questioned, and they're either done. He's not directly saying this is his, but he's implying it, and that causes clicks and interest and stuff like that. And you know, he put up a picture of Mark Anders' Bigfoot, the Mexico Bigfoot photo one time, saying, well, imagine you wake up and find this on your trail camera, and he posts that picture. And everybody's like, is that yours? Did you take that picture? And he's not answering. What does that tell you? And hello to Mike. Mike just snuck into the house. Hello, Mike.
For a long time, there was the side story of all the guys that were up at the cabin too, that it wasn't just the emails that he was reading. He was telling you about his buddies up at the cabin and what they're dealing with. And they've got all this happening last night, and now it's again tonight, and I'm hoping that they'll call me on the satellite phone and we'll get an update. And I mean, it just sounded like these guys are fighting for their freaking lives up there. And it's like, if this is happening, why aren't you grabbing a camera and going there? I mean, it just seemed too convenient, you know. It's just the whole narrative that he was presenting.
Right. And that is probably the number one indicator, I think, of shows is that they have a narrative. For years, Sasquatch Chronicles had the narrative of Sasquatch is violent. They're dangerous. They're killers. And they would feature a lot of people telling these horrifying Sasquatch stories.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we never see their reports. A lot of those people, we don't see their reports anywhere else, only on Sasquatch Chronicles. And yes, I think what happens is the best of fakery occurs when you take, okay, we don't have a story. We don't have a person this week. So we need to make a good story up and produce a good show. In the meantime, if we can get this witness to come on, that's wonderful. So what happens is they do intermix real events, but when they don't have those real events, they throw in other stuff. That's why when this show was created, and I can tell you because I'm like, and I'm not tooting my horn, but I'm like the flipping grandfather of podcasting around here because we started this show in 2006.
Yeah.
In another form before YouTube was a thing, right? And we came up with a plan, or I should say I did, because at the time that the hosts were very transitional. Right. And I went through, Big G, Mark.
I did start listening in 2007.
Right.
When Steve started, there wasn't a chat room. Everybody just talked on AOL during his podcast. Right?
No, wasn't that. What wasn't that bad? I don't think. I mean, you
Well,
know,
they had a chat at the old place too.
Had the Commodore 64 out while they were.
yeah. No, really, in reality, we decided that, okay, we'd love to have witnesses on, but that's not going to happen every week. No, do not.
Jen said, "Can we all call you Grandpa Steve?"
I have 5 of them calling me Grandpa now. I don't need any
Papa
more people.
Steve.
Yeah,
That was
Grandpa, and then I get mugged for the next. Anyway, we decided that, okay, that's why we picked up a number of different formats. And if you notice on this channel, there are times when we have a witness come on and talk about their experience and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when we don't have that witness, we talk about other topics, to analysis, to hot topics, to discussing historical events. And that's how we threw that mix in. And unfortunately, there's people out there that want to hear just this or just that or just this or just that. So the audience we attract is the kind of people, I think, that want to hear everything. They want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that was really important to me. And yes, does that mean I don't get, 60,000 subscribers like that? Because I'm going to tell you, I don't know how many times these, and this is another recurring effect a lot. Oh, you just criticized Thinker Thunker, or oh, you just criticized Todd Standing, or you just criticized, so-and-so. You're jealous. Now, let me answer that one first head on. Am I jealous? Well, let's see. I don't care how quick the channel grows. I love it to grow quickly, like theirs, but in reality, I want this quality audience we've grown over the last this specifically since 2019 when we moved to the YouTube channel. I would rather have that. But am I jealous? Well, I don't know. You tell me. I get asked to lecture several times a year. And guess what? Sometimes I even get paid to do that. And I get free travel and I get free hotels. I've been on TV. I've been on 17 or 18 different programs now. I am now going to be regular on a History Channel program as part of the Bigfoot panel with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Kathy Strain, Cliff Barrickman, and Ken Gerhardt. I've written 4 books that do pretty well. Do I really need to be jealous of somebody putting bullshit, pardon the French, out every week? No. So when they throw that at me, I kind of laugh at it. And that is the quickest thing from somebody to get banned on the channel, because I won't let them throw the J word out there. Oh, you're calling me jealous? That's name calling. If you want to argue my points and my facts and stuff like that, we can do that in a great manner. We can do that in a legitimate. And we have talked, Jeff, about how some of our podcast friends we don't always agree with, but we're able to talk it out respectfully.
Sure.
Right. But if you're going to come at me, then you're going to be blocked from the channel and you're going to be banned from talking on the channel because you're not showing the proper etiquette. This is my house. I will treat my guests.
And
I will treat my guests with respect.
Yeah.
But don't come into my house and disrespect.
I don't care so much if somebody wants to come on and have a difference of opinion with me. I don't even care if you're not that versed in speaking your position. Right. What does bother me is if I am going to have a guest on, somebody coming on and belligerently speaking towards that guest, that's an issue for me. To ask these guests to come on and prepare a podcast or a stream with these guests and try to make it entertaining for everybody who's going to show up. The last thing I need is somebody belittling them. An adult who has a different opinion, articulate that in the chat. I'm sure my guests would welcome it, but start calling them an a-hole and everything else just because they think differently than you. If I ban you, don't go to other channels and talk like you're some sort of victim and Jeff banned me from his channel. You're the guy who came in and made an idiot of yourself. I didn't do that, you know.
Yep.
But
and Jeremiah from the Bigfoot Society says that's a big issue. Agreed, Jeff. Great point, Jeff. And I agree 1,000%. And I know who you're probably talking about too.
And the person I'm talking about presently isn't banned on my channel. I might have banned him for a week or two to try to put a point across, double secret probation here. But
oh my God, that person who was on double secret probation and then broke that probation. So
yeah,
I'm done with it. And it's not because of necessarily they disagree with me. They're so disruptive.
Yeah. I spoke about this on one of my last shows, and that's that there's a couple channels out here in the YouTube world that are primarily professional debate channels that rarely talk about Bigfoot. I mean, they'll talk about Islam versus Christianity, creationism against evolution, a lot of different things, flat earth and round earth, right? And you get people on who have adamantly different positions on things. And yet I'll find myself listening to, for instance, a flat earth, round earth debate with these guys. It's 2 versus 2. And because these guys are articulate and speak well, and, it's not like all of a sudden I'm a flat earther, but I can listen to them speak and say, you know what? I can respect their ability to present their opinion. I'm not agreeing with it, but there's something to be appreciated amongst two people who have very, very different opinions, but can articulate through that and speak with each other and communicate through that. I just cannot believe how many times in our community that you can have two people that agree on 90% and that 10% they don't agree on, they have to start punching each other in the nose over. And I don't get it. I just don't get it. But
that's, as we've seen in the overall scope of things, the communities, whether it be paranormal, ufology, Bigfootery, flat earth versus round earth, in politics and in religion, we're seeing that type of behavior. We're just a microcosm of what's going on around the planet, because you can't.
It exists in other communities. I mean, I heard Eric talking about it over on Paranormal Highway about how the Mandela effect community. You go in there and speak a different position, they'll vex you and figure out where you live and slash all your tires that night. Yeah. I mean, It is crazy how bad it gets.
Wait. Did you say the Mandela effect community? Right. Had to do that. I mean, to think there's even a community for that.
Oh, I know, but I was like this awakening. He's talking about how much you go in and speak bad about that. You'll have 20 people creating swear words you've never heard of before as they talk to you, but
unreal.
Hollow Earth,
Hollow Earth,
yeah.
The mermaid community. Don't forget the
like
mermaid
a good
community,
King
the
Kong
Dogman community, the Chupacabra community, the Loch Ness community, the overall cryptozoology community, the champ community. There's apparently a champ community. We can go on and on and on.
Oh yeah.
And they all have their issues and they all have their arguments. So for folks out there saying, well, this is why Bigfooting is something, no, this is the way the world rolls. Yeah. Whether you're here or in Congress, or you're in some ecumenical society, they're talking about religious things. This is the way the world works. There are people that are fact-based. There are people that are extremists. There are people, and by no means.
Oh,
And
Jay,
thank you
golly.
again.
Thanks,
Thank you, Jay, so much.
Wow.
There are so many different types of communities, and just so I remember to tell people, this week on the 28th, Wednesday night, we will be doing the next Squatch-D presentation for the members. We'll be talking about the Miller doc, and how we look at that. Yeah, Jimbo, I don't think there's an argument there, Jimbo. Yeah, and then there's the people that, let's face it, we talk about that guy with the V name. I'll just say it, Volp. We talk about Volp, but think about. I want people to stop and think about it. And yes, let's for a second put away his nastiness and his little threats using firearms and stuff like that, which I don't know why that hasn't gotten him striked out on YouTube to begin with. But if you look at that, I don't hate the guy. I feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
Think about the psycho, and think about the machinations in his mind. I mean, how bad of a guy is he in shape to constantly make up very obvious lies? Oh, my toe should be registered as a dangerous weapon because I ended up killing 5 dogmen with a sidekick or something like that.
Oh.
And that to me doesn't scream somebody that's being dishonest or a grifter. That explains somebody to me that needs to, if he was he wasn't in the military service because he claimed to have been in the Marine Corps and got pulled out of boot camp to be part of this special dogman hunting crew.
Well,
I've shot Bigfoot 400 times. He didn't go down.
I've got a coffee table that should be registered as a dangerous weapon because it's probably broke my big toe about 5 times.
Well, one of the things that we had spoke before on was that one thing that it's easy to forget this, and I try to always be mindful of it, and I encourage others to be mindful of it, that people are here for different reasons. Obviously, some are here because they're looking for truths and they're looking for a way to understand maybe something they've experienced, and others are here to be entertained. I get that. Now, I'm not here to prop one up and put one down.
Right.
I also understand that there's a lot of people in our chats who have different backgrounds and are experiencing different things in their lives right now. Some of them don't get out of the house easily. Some of them spend a lot of time watching these channels because it is a way to exercise their mind because they're kind of stuck where they're stuck. Maybe they don't have a lot of interaction with people on a daily basis, and a lot of their communicating is done right here online. And I think about my normal day dealing with 5 realtors and 2 bad home deals and the cussing and swearing and the frustration and everything else, and the joy and the celebration when a deal goes through.
Thank you, Walter.
You start realizing that all the emotion that I go through in a single day, the appreciation, the celebration, the happiness, the joy, and the hurt and the pain and the agony and the frustration, for those who are here in this chat that maybe are kind of stuck here, they experience those same emotions every day. And those emotions play out through their communication here. Sometimes they're having a great day. Sometimes they aren't. And you don't know where everybody is in what they're experiencing right now. Some of them are maybe in a pretty painful spot. And I'm certainly not here to try to justify anything that Volt or anybody else would do, because obviously he's an extreme example. But
right.
it's so easy to say, well, that person's an a-hole, or that person's an idiot, or that person acts like this. You don't know what they're going through that day. And I'm not justifying their behavior, but you know what? They may be hurting a lot more than you can wrap your head around.
Right. And that's my point, is that for all the hatred we throw out at Vault, and all the shade we throw out at Vault, which is well earned, for what he has said in return and stuff like that. Let's face it, the man has something not quite working inside of him.
Sure.
And he perhaps needs medical attention and some medical intervention to fix that.
Yeah.
When somebody makes comments that are so blatantly lies, and I'm understanding now the big toe thing was actually a parody, so forgive me for that one, but he still claimed to have been Chris Kyle's Paul Bearer and all that other stuff.
I was serious as a heart attack about my coffee table, though. That thing is dangerous.
Right. Those are, and that's why and people think sometimes that we can be heartless. I'm not. There's a lot of people, like, the New Hampshire report. There was some intent there going on that I believe was going on, but I truly believe that the guy is in need of maybe some evaluation for one reason or the other. And that, to me,
unfortunately, I don't think it's just a matter of him being depressed or being a threat to himself. He's actually went out of his way to threaten other people and shown that he's a danger to everybody around him.
Right.
That's a little bit different than what we normally would see in somebody who's acting
and
out.
that's exactly why I said he's the one that's really in need of some medical attention, because when you sit there and start displaying your firearms in a threatening manner the way he does, to me that says, how many times did we ignore that with these kids that go into schools?
Right. Brian.
Brian says, if you get caught bullshitting one time, it's for life. Yeah. I get that.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
But people are interested in this hobby for different reasons, and I think we may have some. And Steve covers this. Well, I don't want to give this stuff away, but
you can go ahead, Chris. Just say what you're saying.
You talk about it quite a bit, about people, like their motivations and different areas of the brain that causes different things.
In doing my latest book, there was so much studying of the real motivations behind why people do certain things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And does it make me less inclined to go after them? No. I mean, there's people like the Biscardis and the Dyers and the Standings of the world that, they have probably they may have some underlying issues. Some of it being greed or grift.
Well, if people will remember,
others have this serious, Biscardi does not have a new video out. That's an old video that's dated 2006. Just as an FYI.
Well, if people will remember a couple years ago, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, Mick, but the difference between Dyer and Biscardi and Standing is there's premeditation that went into those.
Right. And that's
the reasoning for them doing what they did.
Right. Yeah.
They had a goal from the day they started. And it didn't have your best interests in mind. Right. But if you can think of 2 years ago, if you'll remember when we were on Joe's show one night, and we had a gentleman come in and start telling a story, and several of us were popping on the screen, me and you and some others, that we were asking him honest questions about what had happened. And we knew right away there was a red flag here, that this guy wasn't being honest. What we didn't immediately consider was, why isn't he being honest? I mean, it was just really easy to nail this guy to the wall.
Oh,
And-
you know, you got to understand though, when somebody goes on to lie,
Yeah.
there's intent.
Oh yeah. He
Yeah.
thought about this. Trust me,
Right.
this wasn't just him speaking off the cuff. He planned on this before he dialed the phone number. He planned on this before, you know, he thought about this probably several weeks of what he would say to be accepted. But as we broke this thing and exposed it for what it was, and then started reverse engineering this with him as to why did you do this? And we come to understand that he was broken and he was hurting tremendously, and he had nobody in his personal life that he could lean on, and he had become enthralled in this particular corner of the room, this community online with Bigfoot, and these couple of different channels that a lot of us find ourselves on, talking to each other. And he seen the people like Joe and you, and, you know, and felt like, man, if I could just be a part of that. And he felt that making this up, if he could get people to believe it, he could get to where he had somebody standing next to him instead of feeling alone all the time.
And
Now,
you know
when you reverse engineer it and realize that was his motivation to get him where it wasn't to defraud anybody. It wasn't to take their money. It wasn't to sell books on a back table somewhere. It was simply, he was depressed and alone and spiraling.
right.
I look at something like that, and when I see people that kind of go out and kind of recreate what he started doing in chats and stuff, or I have to use him as a reminder to myself, what are we looking at here? Is this somebody here with a true intent to defraud, or is this somebody who's hurting?
Right. And there's a difference. You're absolutely right. There's a difference between him and a Biscardi, and that's what I was bringing out, that the reason why I go after a Biscardi and a Standing and a Linda Newton Perry and all these other people is because they're trying to constantly, you know, and repeatedly tell lies, and they can't be rebuffed. Whereas people generally, like this gentleman, when you confront them with that, they'll admit it and they'll tell you why. Yeah. And a lot of it is, and you think, how flawed is that thinking? If he wanted to be really accepted to that level, what he could have done is gone out and debunked something or reviewed something and said, hey,
sure,
what do you think of this? Or, you know, I think this is wrong for such reason. Instead, he went through it through a completely wrong reason by making up a story.
And he really didn't think this through very well at all. Because when he said that he was hired by this wealthy person to photograph and get proof of these Sasquatch on this property, your first question was, he paid you to do this? And the guy said, yeah. And you said, did he pay you in cash or check? And boom, fell flat on his face and where this story was going.
Because the devil is in the details.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew that would trip him up.
Oh.
Because that is probably something he did not think about.
No. And this all falls in with the book, Steve, where Steve delves into psychology pretty deep to try to help figure out the motivations of why these people do what they do.
And I talk about things like people that hold on to. Now I have this, and I bet you I lost it. I certainly did lose it. I had something that I wanted to say tonight, and of course,
well, you know what?
Now it's lost.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
You're enjoying what?
Your book.
Ah, there it is. So it's kind of my statement of the night. It's much easier to fool people than to convince them they're being fooled. Who said that?
It's much easier.
It's much easier to fool people than to convince them they are being fooled. They have been fooled.
I would guess it's probably somebody who was fooling. Did Rick Dyer say it or somebody
Nope.
like that?
Let's just say.
Well, it's a little too intelligent for Dyer.
Just past page 105.
No, it's not in the book, actually.
Okay. I'm
no,
not there yet.
actually, it was Mark Twain.
Oh.
Okay.
So Mark Twain said it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince them they're being fooled, because he tried so hard to convince people that they were being fooled at times. And there's a reason for that. The book goes into a lot of those reasons. And, that's why people will hold on to something.
Yeah.
Because what happens is they get into something, it becomes part of their belief system.
Well, and it's, a person's pride is a tremendous thing that makes it hard to circle back. And I mean, I've been seeing this in so many different ways. One of the things I was telling Steve, one of the last shows, I shouldn't say the last show I did. The last show I did turned into a bit of an ish show. But before that, the show that I did about the amount of time that I spend in the most remote areas of North America, in Montana and Wyoming, guiding elk hunters and stuff. Spent over 9,000 hours looking through spotting scopes, 6-8 hours a day for 60 days a year. And I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy stuff, and I have not seen a Bigfoot in those areas. Now, it's not saying they aren't there. They've probably watched me plenty of times. But what I'm looking at is, when I did that show, I was trying to address the Bigfoot on the brain, something that I feel is a little bit, this ability, even in high value target areas, okay, which there are some of those out there that you are likely to get some type of interaction if you're persistent in your attempts in those areas, right? Mount St. Helens areas, things like that. But for the most part, when I was talking about these areas and how much time I spent out there, I had so many people replying to me. The amount of feedback I got on that show just blew me away. People who are in research that are saying, dude, I totally agree with you. This is not easy. 5 Bigfooters go out on a 4-day weekend, and in 4 days they get enough stuff thrown at them and heard enough stuff to make a documentary any given weekend. Yet 5 dentists go out and camp and nothing happens, right? It's like, what's going on here? And I had so many of these people saying, dude, amen, brother. Somebody needed to say that. And what blew me away was about a third of these people saying that are guilty of exactly what I'm saying. Their last show, we went out, we got all these knocks and all these sounds recorded. And next weekend, we're going to go out, and guess what? We're going to come back with a whole bunch more. It's like, I'm not saying that there aren't high value target areas where you could have multiple encounters, but the idea that 5 Bigfooters can go out and make this stuff happen every weekend is
to different random areas.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't work like that. And as somebody who has spent 700 nights in remote areas to where you break your leg and crawl 15 miles, you won't find a fire trail, let alone a city. Okay. That's how remote these areas are. I have looked through spotting scopes and seen over 100 grizzlies. I've seen over 400, 500 black bears. I've seen mountain lions. I've seen every vertebrate mammal known in those areas hundreds of times. I haven't seen a Bigfoot through it. Now, I have had an encounter when I was 18, but I've spent 20 years in these wilderness areas and I can't recreate it. And that's looking through spotting scopes at mountaintops, ridge lines, river bottoms, everywhere.
There we go. There's the so habituation. And it does. And Jeff, you are absolutely right. This is a rare creature. I mean, if there's 5,000 or 6,000 of them, say, in the United States, that's a lot of ground. That is a lot of ground to cover when you think about New York having a population of, tens of thousands of bears. And they're rarely seen in New York. They're seen sporadically when there is a moose population in New York, and they're rarely seen. Hell, you can go to Vermont. I've been to Vermont how many times? I've never seen a moose yet in Vermont.
Yeah.
Right?
I go to New Hampshire up in the Bretton Woods area at the Mount Washington Hotel. You can walk the Bridal Falls area. You can go up Mount Washington, Cannon Mountain, Bretton Woods, all those areas, and look forever. You can't see black bears in the wild. Go look at the dumpsters at 2 a.m. behind the Mount Washington Hotel. There's 15 black bears standing on top of the dumpsters eating their ass off. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying that because you experienced something and I didn't, that it couldn't happen. I'm not that guy. Yep. But I am a realist, and I realize how, not just the hours that I spent out there, in over 650 nights in these areas over the last 20 years, 6 to 8 hours a day, spotting scopes every day. That's almost 9,000 hours myself. Now you start adding up the 100+ guides in my network, that 60 some of them I've had serious conversations with on, have you ever experienced anything that you couldn't find a natural explanation for? And I've heard some crazy stuff from them. Some really unnatural things happening out there. None of them involved Sasquatch. And you start adding up the hours they spend. Now we're looking at 280,000 hours through a spotting scope. Haven't seen it.
Jeff.
5 guys go out in a tent and boom, one night, there it is.
Jeff, how did you present the question?
Well, I don't like bringing up Bigfoot in any of my questions.
Right. So when you said, have you experienced something unnatural?
What I'll ask people to get the ball rolling, I'll say, have you ever experienced anything out there that you couldn't find a natural explanation for?
Okay, so there's where the issue. Hold on. Well, hear me out on that question. The flaw in that question is the term natural. Because Bigfoot is a natural creature. I was asked many years ago by somebody that was trying to be skeptical, asking, well, how do you think Bigfoot affects you? Wouldn't you see a change in the ecosystem? Well, why would you see a change in the ecosystem when they've been there? The same thing with sign. If a Bigfoot is in an area and creating sign, the hunter may come through it and consider it very natural, but attribute it perhaps to something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and these guys here, understanding, most of them spend more time out there than I do, which is an incredible amount of time in these very remote areas. You're taking horseback 20 to 30 miles from where you're dropping a trailer, and then from where you put the horses, you're still moving in 4, 5, 6 miles on top of that.
Sure.
It's really remote areas.
But
with these guys, when they start talking about things that they've experienced, they feel they've seen it all and heard it all. You know, we hear sounds sometimes of somebody will play a coyote sound or a feline sound, and you'll say, what is that? Is that an owl? This and that. These guys, they don't even have to listen to anything twice. They'll tell you exactly what it is.
Let me ask you a question. And this is very common in the criminal side of the world. Okay? When you ask somebody if they ever experienced crime in their life, they likely will tell you, no, not really, unless you get very specific. I dare you, this is just, I dare you to try another experiment and ask them directly. And I bet you the results will be different because, number one, by you not broaching that topic first, they're not going to tell you that because you know why?
I've experienced the opposite, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I have walked into the same small tackle and bait shop in northern Minnesota down the road from my home and seen all kinds of old fellas that have lived their lives out in the woods and whatnot. And if I walk up to them and say, have you ever seen a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot out in the woods? They're going to look at you and almost every time say, no, they don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to go there. When I open it up and say, have you ever experienced something out in the woods you couldn't find a natural explanation for? All of a sudden, they'll start talking about sounds they heard. They went out and found their tree stand bent up. They went and this and that. And then I'll start asking, what do you think did it? And I'll start bringing it and narrowing that conversation in. And a lot of times you find yourself talking about Sasquatch. But had I just asked them out of the gate, have you ever had an experience with Sasquatch? I never would have got anywhere. They don't want to be ridiculed.
I completely understand that, but you understand that the psychology of that is if I can understand that going into a shop.
Yeah.
But if you're the expert person out there taking people on a guide tour.
Yeah.
And you ask them that. Now you are in a position, you're the power guy, and now the power guy is asking this question. I many, and you can even predicate that I many years ago had this really weird experience.
Yeah.
Put it out there, and that puts everybody at ease, and then you'll get the truth out of it. And then
I
you
think
know
an
you get the truth out of it.
interesting experiment that I don't know if you've heard about this, but Russ Jones, the host of one of the shows over on Untold Radio,
Yep.
He was doing shorts, just quick interview, like 15-second interviews with people, right? And he was in the Menards parking lot, which for those of you who don't have Menards in your area of the country, it's like Home Depot, Lowe's, okay? He was out in the parking lot where the cart return was. And as people would bring their cart to the cart return, he'd turn his phone on and say, hey, my name's Russ. I've got a YouTube channel, and I'm just asking folks simple questions today. Do you mind if I ask you a question? They're like, no, go ahead. And he's like, do you believe that something like Bigfoot could exist out there and not be, and kind of caught everybody off guard. He asked every one of these people the same thing. They gave him a straightforward answer. I mean, half of them were like, yeah, I think something could exist like that. I think it's possible they could. It was really interesting to see how many people said that. Now, he never asked anybody, have you had an experience with it? He was saying, do you think that this creature could exist? And it was crazy. The 50% or so batting average he was holding of people saying, yeah, I think it could exist. Just out of the blue. It made me want to go stand on the street downtown and start asking people that, because I'm just curious to see if I would have got the same.
I've always found that you will get honest answers more from people by being straightforward than trying to go a roundabout way of it.
Yeah.
And that's just typical interrogation. You can't beat around specifics of certain things. You just have to directly ask them.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate thing. And that's been my interrogation experience with people over the years. And I've interviewed thousands of criminals who, will not tell you things just out of defensiveness. And once you get their defense down, they'll tell you anything you want to know a lot of times.
Yeah. So. Now Mick brings up a good point. It depends on the demographics of the area. I will say this. If I walk into a cafe in a suburb of St. Louis and just ask people out loud, has anybody in here ever seen a Bigfoot? they're going to look at me like, where's the local police? Get this guy out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now I walk into a cafe in the Mount St. Helens area. I walk into a cafe up in northern Idaho
Or in
some of these
Whitehall,
small
or
communities
in,
and ask that. You've got 4 or 5 people raising their hand in the
Right,
air when you
right.
ask that.
Correct.
I'll tell you something I believe. I believe more people have had an experience with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, while they were out in nature than realize it. Because I believe there are those groups of people which don't even have Bigfoot anywhere in their mind. Okay, it's just some sort of fantasy creature created. It's all just fake. And they're out doing a 12-mile hike out in the wilderness. And while they're going down this trail or through the woods, trekking their own way, they catch a movement out of their eye, the corner of their eye. So they stop and glance over. They don't see anything, so it was nothing, and just keep on moving.
I find some of those people to be the most intriguing to talk to, Chris. People who have an outdoor threshold of experience, who aren't in the Bigfoot community. And when you can get them to open up and talk to you about things they've experienced out there, it is interesting how many of them have probably had an encounter or an experience, but they won't let themselves get there in their head. They'll tell you stuff like, yeah, something screamed at us at night, and then something threw something, and we could hear it hit the tent. I don't know what it was, they'll say. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what it was? You got an idea in your head what it was.
Right.
What do you think has opposable thumbs out there throwing a rock at your tent? I mean, so, but they don't want to get there. They don't want to entertain that because now they feel like they're losing the grip on reality.
Hold on. I have to do this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the band.
The troll has been removed.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah, well, I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
I knew you were. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there it is. Dang. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's like we share the same thoughts sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do think there's a lot of people who have had something. They just feel like it's shameful to talk about.
By the way, is Bigfoot. We're not laughing with you. We're laughing at you because we're wise to your game, especially when you gave it up that you were the one I kicked out here a couple of weeks ago. Goodbye. Sorry, Jeff had to interpose.
No, that's all right. But no, I appreciate Chris bringing that up because I think there's a lot of people who just don't feel comfortable talking about. I mean, if you ask people here in our chat, what's one of the things that you value the most about this community is that for them, when they found this community, they felt they could talk about maybe some experiences they had or even questions that they wanted to try to get answered that they just didn't feel comfortable asking or talking about anywhere else,
Now, there's a good statement. I wonder if, people that hear screaming are actually hearing cougars.
Yeah.
In my area, we don't have cougars, but we have bobcats.
Yeah.
So it's possible that some people, that's why a lot of times when I get reports of just screams, stuff like that, I make a mental note of it, but I don't put much weight on it unless there's some circumstantial evidence that, did they have rocks thrown at them with the screaming? Did they find tracks? Did they have a sighting? All those, then we can start putting together a play, a play. But, that would be the equivalent to saying, well, I saw the robbers run out and they had a bag. Okay, well, a lot of robbers use a bag to put merchandise in and run out of the store.
Right.
So it's just too having somebody hearing something in the woods, even just hearing a tree knock in the woods. Those are the items that really, when I hear that, I myself put them aside and see if there's anything surrounding that particular area where somebody's had a sighting. If somebody says, if by chance, a week earlier, a month earlier, even a couple of months earlier, somebody had a sighting there, or say somebody's hearing screaming and then a week later somebody else reports a sighting, then maybe I'll start putting that piece together. So I put that in the board of, okay, well, this we're not really going to use unless it becomes irrelevant, because although it is a piece of data, but it's not usable data unless there's something else to go with it or to associate that with a Sasquatch.
Well, that reminds me, when I was a kid and my granddad had told me that story about Uncle David and him having down in Marrowbone, Kentucky, over in Cumberland County, and him having that encounter. I'd asked my granddad, I said, did you ever see anything like that? And he said, no. He said, I've never seen anything out of the ordinary. I said, did you ever hear anything, make a sound like that or anything, or a squall or something? He did say, now I have heard, he called them panthers. Okay. They call them panther. It's a whole thing, black panthers. Okay. He said he did hear a black panther or a panther up some of the hollers sometime, had screamed every now and then, but he never equated it to being anything Bigfoot related. In his mind, he heard a panther, which would probably, mountain lion or whatever, cougar.
Yeah. I have heard, well, I've guided mountain lion hunters out here in the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Hey, Charlie Wonton, very true. Agreed. A lot of people that hear sounds of the woods don't really know the sounds of the woods. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I think is something to pay attention to. Not only just learning what animals are in your areas, but educating yourself on the range of sounds that those animals can make. And a good example would be something easy like a coyote. When I mention the word coyote, people typically hear that yippee howl or that sustained howl, right? But if you were to really investigate the range of sounds they could make, it'd kind of blow you away.
Right.
Same thing, especially when you start dealing with felines. Now, in the Western Black Hills, I spend a lot of time in mountain lion country, and then also where I guide hunters up in Montana, Wyoming, and Manitoba is mountain lion territory. But one really interesting thing is up here in the northern Minnesota area and up into Manitoba is lynx. And out of those three felines, the bobcats, the mountain lions, and the lynx, there is nothing as unsettling as hearing a lynx sound off at 2-3 in the morning. It is something that is on a totally different level than the sound a bobcat can make or a mountain lion. And I say that just because they're kind of a deceiving creature. Okay. First of all, they're only about 30, 40 pounds. Okay. I mean, bobcat's about 15, 17 pounds. A lynx is about 30, 40. I've seen them 50. Then you get into the mountain lions, which will push up to 150, 200 pounds. But a lynx, their guttural depth and sustainability of their screaming, howling, moaning sounds they can make, it doesn't sound like something that's 30 or 40 pounds big. It sounds like something that's 1,400 pounds big. It's crazy. The guttural push that they have compared to, like I say, mountain lions can get loud, but they don't have that sustaining, like you can hear a lynx from miles away in the right conditions at night. And when you do, you could be laying in bed or laying in your tent in a sleeping bag. You will levitate 4 or 5 feet in the air and you never get used to it. I've gotten used to the sounds bobcats and mountain lions make. I hear it from a distance and I think, oh, wow, hey, that was a mountain lion. A lynx does it, and I want to run for the truck, man. I mean, it freaks me out every time I hear it.
Just on a side note, did anybody see that there was a fatal cougar attack in Northern California the other day?
I saw something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there were two brothers, and one of the brothers had gotten a facial laceration. I'm probably sure it caught his neck. And when the Rangers finally started firing shots to scare the mountain lion away, they got to the guy. And, they got to the older brother. There was two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother, obviously. And the older brother was deceased.
Yeah, that's too bad.
And, but it does happen. And people don't understand that, and it just is as a warning that if you do get attacked by a cougar, mountain lion, aka panther, or aka even catamount, the response to that attack is not to run, but to fight back.
Oh yeah, you've got to be as big and loud as you can.
And if they jump on you, start throwing punches at it, get it off you, because they won't get off.
Protect your throat.
What happens is, I've seen this a couple different times out in the Black Hills. That's why a lot of times runners and mountain bikers out there will actually wear stocking caps or backpacks with big slanted alien eyes on the back. They want that so that if a mountain lion was to go into pursuit mode on you, if they see those eyes, they'll back down. They don't want to be looked at. They want to feel that they're pursuing you, not that you're recognizing them. And so these eyes that you see on the back of these stocking caps and the back of, they're actually pretty effective in warding that off. It's crazy.
You know what also is good at warding off bobcats as well is bear spray.
Yeah.
Bear spray will affect, if you're getting into their eyes and their sniffer, they're going to go away.
Yeah. But there is a pursuit mode that happens with felines, and it's no different than your normal domestic house cat.
Right.
You got a cat laying in the sun taking a nap. Guess what? Grab a fishing pole, tie a feather to the end of it, and drag it by it on the carpet, and watch what happens.
Yep.
They can't deny that instinct when they fall into it. And here's what happens. Mountain lion's sleeping on a branch, whatever, sees this mountain bike go by. It's intrigued. It starts following and pursuing. And after a little bit, it literally gets into a trance of pursuit. It can't break it. It feels like it's vested in it and it can't stop. You can throw rocks at it. It's literally like a game to them at that point, and they can't break it easily. And so, the whole running away or whatever, it's just going to get them more vested into this trance of pursuit. Yeah. You've got to break them out of that. It's like snapping your fingers or slapping a sleepwalker. You've got to be screaming and big and jumping up and down and throwing stuff at it. And all of a sudden, when you see it break out of that, it's like it lifts its head up and looks at you differently than it has been, and it turns around and leaves. Like it realized that it was doing this. It's hard to explain if you've never seen that before, but
I've seen a YouTube video, and I can't think of the channel off the top of my head, but this mountain lion had been preying on this guy, and the guy had turned around, and the cat was still walking up slowly.
Yeah.
And he took his pistol out and he fired, several shots. Of course, it was, hitting to the left, hitting to the right. He was probably pretty well shaken up. But even at firing those shots, it took a few seconds for that cat to break out of that predator mode where he's hunting the guy.
I had probably the worst. I shouldn't say worse because I didn't suffer any damage in it, but the scariest encounter that I've had with a mountain lion was outside on our property here. I had a mountain lion out in the tree line. My two labs were in their kennel barking at this. It was cloudy, so there was no moonlight, no ambient light, barking at this dark tree line. And I'm walking up to the tree line thinking, what's going on here? I had my shotgun with me with some T-shots, some goose loads in it. And as I'm walking up to the tree line, I look back at the kennel and I can see exactly where both those dogs are looking on this tree line. And I'm looking and it just looks black. And as I get about 15 feet from the tree line, this mountain lion just sounded off and just lost its mind at me. I turned around and started running for the house, and I think I hurtled over my boat that was in the driveway. I get inside, and my wife's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like freaking out. I said, "There's a mountain lion out there." And she goes, "Did you shoot at it?" And I'm looking at, I'm like, "I forgot I was holding my shotgun. I totally forgot." But I went back on that back deck and started trying to find it again with my FLIR. And I noticed there were 4 deer does right at the water's edge of the lake that this thing had been pursuing likely for quite a while over a long distance. And it did. I'm just telling you, 999 times out of 1,000, when a mountain lion sees a human, it's getting the hell out of there. It does not want to be around you.
Right.
For that thing to do what it did that night, I think it had been pursuing, like in that trance pursuit mode, those does. And when I showed up, it was like, dude, these are mine. I'm vested in this. Get away from here. It just would not leave, you know? And I think that's what happens sometimes with humans, and whether it's bears or whether it's, you know, mountain lions or whatever, you get into these areas where you put yourself between them and kittens or cubs, or you put yourself between them and quarry that they've been, you know, pursuing or stalking. And now here's this human element. They're going to stand their ground for it rather than run away like they normally would, I think.
You know, I don't know if you've heard my Bobcat story, but when I first moved into my new neighborhood, I was here maybe about 3 months, and it was a very sunny fall afternoon. And you know, my wife had spotted the Bobcat up on the berm behind my house, and eventually my German Shepherd jumped in the window and started barking, and the Bobcat said, "All right, I'm out of here." Turned around and jumped into the woods. Well, about a half hour later, here's the Bobcat now laying in the sun in my yard. Just like, oh, I'm just enjoying myself. Well, I had a twofold thing. Was this animal dangerous? Because I got a shotgun in the house. So I said, if I'm going to go out on the side deck, and if the Bobcat gets up and starts coming toward me, I'll duck right back in. I'll get my gun and I'll take care of the problem. I go, if it's not, it'll turn around and it'll run away. And I've just taught it that this is not an area for it to be hanging out at, because you don't want to ever entice the animal to be there. Like, oh, let me throw some food out there.
Some food scraps. There you go.
Yeah, because then it's going to keep coming back. So I wanted to teach it, hey, listen, this is not your area to be hanging out. So I walked out to the deck, and the Bobcat looks at me, and I go, yeah, what are you doing here? And he turned around and beelined into the woods and gone.
Yeah.
So other than just waiting for nighttime to hit where they kind of walk through or walk the berm, that's the last time we've seen them anywhere that close to the house.
Sandy would have been taking a container of cat chow out there, probably. She loves animals.
Especially when you have dogs.
A good friend of mine out in the Black Hills, he lives in a really remote area, and on his huge back deck he has a hot tub. And when it's cold and snowy out there and he's got the cover on that hot tub, that cover's 102 degrees, just like what it's insulated. Oh. And he's about once a week, he'll send me a picture of a mountain lion just laying there like it's trying to take a nap on the cover of his hot tub. And I'm like, dude, when do you ever use that? I mean, I don't know that I can sit in my hot tub after that and feel like I'm okay here, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
Oh man.
Yeah. The one thing, if you learn anything, don't entice any animal that's wild to come visit.
Don't make it comfortable.
Right. We have a couple of cats that are, I want to say feral, because I've caught them on trail cameras numbers of times, just walking around at night, middle of the night. And one time, one of those feral cats was hanging out around the house, and I gave him a little can of tuna. and got to pet him, and he was very friendly, and off he went. Next day he came by again, and he had a little more tuna, and that was it. He went on his regular path.
Yeah.
So I assume that probably that was going on probably about like 5 or 6 different houses in the neighborhood, because he was no way starving from anything.
No.
And there is plenty of field mice here, because I've caught them on trail camera as well.
We've had wild kind of feral cats in our area around the lake, to where there's like, we've got 10 or 12 homes on that corner of the lake, and whenever I see one of them cats out there, I think, oh man, come here. You must be starving. Let me give you something. Those cats know what they're doing. They put on that same sad face every damn house they go to, and they eat like kings on everybody's back deck. They probably eat better than anybody's.
Hang on. You know what this means, folks. And I know Trackway's been holding this back.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Pretty good. Well, let's ask Ralph. Yeah, apparently Ralph didn't like it either.
I disagree with Ralph on this one. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
the only animal that can make its own custard.
Well, with the hot tub deal, y'all have reminded me, and I'm going to tell something on a buddy of mine, Kenny Underwood, KU. I'm going to tell this on you, Kenny, so don't get mad at me. When he was a kid, he lived in Marrowbone, Kentucky. And of course, now in Marrowbone, they've had a main road there, but most time people live off in the sticks. Well, they had an antique, those clawfoot bathtubs.
Sure.
Their house had that time did not have indoor plumbing, which many in that area didn't. And they had an old antique bathtub on the back porch, and that's where they would take their bath. Of course, usually they would wait till nighttime to take their bath because, of course, less people around.
Yeah.
So he got out of the tub one night, and after he finished taking his bath, he was completely naked, and he dried off a little bit, and he wrapped a towel around him. And as soon as he wrapped his towel around him, he looked off to the back off the back porch, and there was a panther standing there looking at him. And KU said he turned around, he looked, and they locked eyes about the same time. And KU said, "Ooh." I reckon the cat just, kind of walked away, and Kenny went inside the house. But can you imagine the fear of being completely naked? Wrapped with a towel, and you're faced with a mountain lion or a panther, whatever, just feet away from you in the yard.
The felines are one animal that I think when you have a confrontation with one or have an experience where you find yourself near one, you have completely caught that animal off guard. They don't seem to express a curious instinct like you see with a lot of animals, right? I've even seen it with wolves, coyotes. They get curious. They'll go and check stuff out. They get a little, find themselves in positions that they didn't mean to get themselves in. Now they've got to retreat. It seems to me anytime you find yourself, whether it's a mountain lion, a bobcat, a lynx, whatever, amongst a feline, it's a matter of they did not expect you to be there. They came walking around a corner and there was a human. I don't think they look at humans from 50 yards away and think, oh, I'm curious. I want to get a little closer. They just don't seem to do that very often. But
yep. And, typically the same thing. A lot of encounters with Bigfoot seem to be chance encounters where people are walking down a trail, and the Bigfoot a lot of times looks just as surprised as the human as described.
I can tell you, I felt that way when I had my encounter in retrospect when I was 18 years old on this island. When I look back at the expression that this had, I feel like it had like it was really confused by what I was as much as I was confused by what it was.
Well, Jeff, for the listeners at home that haven't heard this, can you share that with us? Would you mind?
I can tell you a little. I mean, it basically when I graduated from high school at 18 years old, I grew up the son of a hunting guide, and so I mean, I'd been big game hunting for a lot of species in very remote areas. I was comfortable in the outdoors. I really, for 18, I was really maybe too comfortable, a little naive maybe at sometimes. Didn't assess danger properly because I was just young and invincible, right? But I joined the Army and I wasn't leaving until like 6 weeks after I graduated. So when I graduated, my friend said him and his little brother, who was about 14, was going to be going up into northern Manitoba with his dad, some of his uncles, and some of his cousins. And they wanted to know if I wanted to come with. And I said, sure. I talked to my parents about it, and they're like, dude, you got to fit a whole summer into a couple of weeks before you head to the Army. Why not go? And I was like, okay, I'm going to go. Sure. And we drove up there with a couple Suburbans and a truck, and we hauled a livestock trailer, a big one, full of aluminum boats and motors, because where we were going, there was 3 brothers that lived there that were hunting guides. They guided moose hunters and bear hunters, but they knew my friend's dad, who was a taxidermist, and had a relationship with him, and then said, if you ever want to come up fishing, we'll put you up. They don't normally guide fishermen. So we were bringing our own boats, our own everything. And it was a drive. We drove all the way up to Flin Flon, which is an old logging community kind of on the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border. And we went another 120 or so miles north of there. And it was like a tank trail. I mean, it was really remote. One of those areas that when you get out, and met these 3 brothers, they were like ranged in age from like 45 to 65. Okay. They were spread, the 3 of them, and they were Inuit brothers. I mean, you could tell they grew up in that area. They loved living in that remote area. And me and my friend and his little brother, the 3 of us were in a boat each day. We were going to be there fishing for 8 days. And the first day, this is a huge lake with all kinds of little islands. And this is back in 1987. So there's no GPS on a smartphone, right? We had a laminated little map the size of a piece of typing paper. And some of the islands were named and some of them weren't. But this was a big body of water. There's no development there. So as you look at the shoreline, there's no cabins, there's no telephone poles. It all looks the same, whether you're looking north, south, east, or west. You could get lost if you're not paying close attention. So we wouldn't go very far away. The first day we just went, a mile away and caught some fish, and we'd come back at noon and then go back out in the afternoon, fish some more. And then that night we'd all have a fish fry. We were by far the youngest of this group. His cousins were in their upper 20s. His uncles were all in their 50s. And so we were pretty proud of us, when we'd catch fish, we'd be showing them off to everybody. Well, we kept each day going a little further out. And my friend's little brother was the type that couldn't pee out of a boat for whatever reason. So we were out there and he said, I got to take a leak. And so we pulled up on the shore of a small island that was probably about 30 acres in size. It was tall. It had a lot of height on it. You could see it wasn't just all trees along the shoreline, but there was height in the middle of it. And the shoreline was like pea gravel for about 20, 25 feet from the water's edge to the tree line all around the island. So we pulled the boat up. My buddy and his brothers taking a pee. I had walked down the beach and seen this game trail that goes uphill into these woods. And it was big. I mean, it was like 3.5, 4 foot wide. And I thought, man, that's a really wide game trail. And I'm looking in the pea rock trying to find footprints, thinking, and understand that the 3 days this is our 4th day. So the 3 days leading up to this, couple times a day, we would see a moose swimming from an island to a shoreline, or a bear swimming, or a mule deer swimming. This was not uncommon. I don't know what makes one animal stand on a shoreline and think I got to swim over there, but it was pretty common. And so I'm walking up this thing, and it had like sleeted that morning. It was the first week in June. So everything was greasy, kind of, that trail was, and it was really steep, overgrown with timber that kind of hung over it. So I'm ducking down and walking up this thing, and I'd take 2 steps and slide back a foot. And I just kept working my way up this hill. And it was really amazing at how steep this was for being such a small little island. And as I'm going up there, I hear, and it's quiet. There's no breeze or nothing. The air's damp. If you snapped a finger, I'd hear it from 100 yards away. And I heard this booming crack, like somebody jumped on a log and just snapped it in half. That's how loud it was. And it was to my left. Sounded like it was only like 40 yards away. It was not that far away. And I'm looking through the deadfall that's on the forest floor, and the cedar scrubs and the pine trees and poplar. And I just stood there staring, thinking, I'm going to see a black bear move, because that seemed like that would be that seemed to me, my outdoor experience, that would be the most plausible explanation of what I heard. On these hard rock type substrate islands and stuff, these cedar trees and things that especially when they'd start scratching their backs and stuff, they just tip it over. They don't have deep roots. They're easy to tip these trees over. And maybe I had heard something break or snap a tree over, but I really thought I'd see a black bear move. And I didn't want to retreat down this hill and invoke kind of a chase scenario. I thought, let me just see where this thing is. And after standing there for about 2 minutes, I saw nothing. And it was a long 2 minutes. And I could hear my buddies way below me down on the beach yelling, "Hey, what was that sound? Did you hear that?" And I didn't want to yell back at them, because I'm still thinking, this thing's here somewhere. It's right here. And I can't see it. And I turned to look up that trail, and standing right in front of me, about 15 feet in front of me, I'm looking at the thighs that are the circumference of like 2 5-gallon buckets next to each other, covered in dark chocolate colored hair. And I'm looking right at that thigh level. This thing, because of the incline, being 15 feet away from me, it probably stood in elevation about 2 feet above me, maybe, just from where my feet were and where its feet were.
Right.
But I'm looking at these thighs, and as I'm looking up, I can see it's holding a birch log that's about 6 inches round in its hands, with its fingers curled underneath of it, right at its waist level. I'm looking right at these fingers and the fingertips and the nails and the width of its hips there and the width of its midsection. And as I'm looking up, there's no hourglass, this thing. It is the same width from the hips up the stomach, up the chest, to the shoulders. And I realized this thing's standing straight up. And as I kept looking back and leaning back, trying to see into where its face would be, it was so far above me. I looked back, and as I can see its face, it looked like its skin on its cheeks were like dried dirt. Like there was no gloss to it. It was a matte, cracky looking dried dirt surface to that skin. And my mind is going a million miles an hour, not of what could this thing be, just going through what I knew it wasn't. I was like, this is not a human. This is too big to be a human. This is not a brown bear. This is not a black bear. This is not a moose. I'm going through all the things that are default for me when I'm in the woods looking at big game animals, trying to figure out what am I looking at. Nothing was fitting into the slot. And as I looked up, right as I seen its eyes, that moment that I seen its eyes, it didn't like swing this log at me or ram me hard with it. It just shucked it out of its hands, like you would just like almost bounce past a basketball.
Right.
Like it wasn't really any effort, but it hit me in my waist so hard, it launched me off of my feet. And I slid down this greasy pine needle covered game trail all the way back down to the beach. And I rolled my ankle when I was trying to turn over. I get to the beach and my buddy's there with his little brother, and they see me. And I jumped up and I'm screaming, "Get the F in the boat, get the F." I was losing it. And I think they believed right away that I had been attacked by a bear because I was just screaming, "Get in this boat."
Yeah.
We get in the boat, and my buddy's little brother, who every day we were out, me or my friend was running the motor on this with a 25 horse little outboard motor. I don't know if his little brother, who was 13 or 14, had ever even started an outboard motor before, but he was back there trying to pull it, get it going.
Right.
I'm running. My friend has the nose of the boat pushing it back into the water. He's standing about knee deep in the water. And I'm like moving sideways, watching this tree line. I felt like this thing's going to walk out like this, whatever this thing was. I thought it's right here still. I get to the side of the boat on the starboard side, and I just flail myself over the gunwale into the boat and get sat up. And my friend lifts himself up and gets into the boat, and his little brother's back there pulling and pulling and pulling. This thing isn't starting. And my friend passes the middle seat that I'm in, gets back there and tells his brother to get up front. And his brother's starting it, and I'm just still yelling at them, "Get this thing started. We have to get out of here." And at that point, I looked down the beach, and way down the shoreline from where we're at, it's almost like 75 yards or so down the shoreline, a black bear walks out of the woods right onto the beach and starts walking towards our area while it's looking at the tree line. And I'm thinking, that's not what I was looking at. That's not even close to, this thing's like a 2-year-old bear, doesn't even weigh a few hundred pounds, right? But as this thing got closer, I realized it was missing one of its paws. Like it maybe it got caught in a trap or something when it was younger, but it was missing a paw. And as it got close to us, my friend's little brother is losing his mind, screaming, "There's a bear coming, there's a bear coming." Then I'm just telling him, "Calm down." I'm still glued to the tree line. Like whatever this thing was that was in front of me is still here, and I don't see it. And this little bear kept coming at us. And we had a stringer of a couple little northern pike that we had kept. I told my buddy's brother, "Take one of those fish off and throw it on the shoreline." And so he threw it up on the shoreline. And as this bear got close to us, it stopped, reached down, and it's got its little stub where it's missing its paw and its other paw, and it's trying to bite the head off this fish. And it stops and it looks back at the tree line, drops that fish, and it takes off running faster than I've ever seen a bear move.
Wow.
Down the shoreline away from us back where it came from. And that's when I realized this is not good. Whatever this thing was that was standing in front of me is still here. And my buddy just kept pulling on this motor, finally gets it started. And as we're trolling backwards, we get about probably 50 to 60, 70 yards from the shoreline as we're moving backwards. This thing steps out of that tree line, walks right out onto that shoreline, and is standing there looking at us. Now my friends are seeing it. And I'm staring at this thing, and that's when I realized the height of it, even though I was so far away from it now. I realized that if I ran full blast and jumped as high as I could, I don't know if I could have touched the top of its head. it feels like its head was the height of like a basketball hoop.
Right.
And you can see the hair hanging straight down off of its arms. It, in a fluid movement, it just reached down, picks that fish up that was laying there, holds it, and he's just staring at us. And I'm like, do you see this? Do you see this? And my friend's little brother is coming undone. I mean, wailing and screaming, coming undone. And in retrospect, I think of that. My boys are 19 right now. I have 2 sons. The way they are right now would be kind of the maturity that me and my friend were at that time. When I think of my sons when they were 13 or 14, how they would have probably reacted in that moment versus now that they're 18 or 19, I understand now why my friend's little brother was coming undone the way that he was. He was losing it to a point to where I almost felt like this is like shattering my nerves listening to him while I'm trying to figure out what the heck this thing is standing there looking at us. But as we leave, we started going back to the camp where we would go every day at noon and meet everybody and talk about the fish we caught. And on the way there, Paul shuts the boat off and says, I don't know what we're going to do. And I said, what do you mean? He says, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to tell your dad about this. He says, I'm not telling my dad about this. He says, we're the youngest ones here. They already make fun of us. Nobody's going to believe us. And I'm like, do you know how big that was? And we talked about that, the size reference. I said, it had to have been over 9 foot tall. And he said, yeah. And I said, a full-size 9.5 foot tall, 10 foot tall grizzly bear weighs around 1,200, 1,300 pounds. I knew that for a fact. Those are record-sized grizzly bears are in that 12, 13. I said, this thing had to weigh over 1,000 pounds. My friend agreed with that. I said, we have to tell somebody. And he says, you can tell your dad when you get home. He says, I'm not telling mine. I am not going to be the butt of everybody's joke. We have to be here for 4 more days. And he could not, in his mind, work through how will he tell everybody what happened to us out here. So when we got back, everybody could tell that we were a little unsettled. I mean, normally we were hitting the dock, jumping up and down, showing everybody our fish. It was a different scenario for us this time. And I think people could tell. And one of these, the oldest of these Inuit brothers, when everybody left the dock, walked up to me and said, are you okay? And I said, yeah. And he says, did you guys get in an argument or a fight? What happened? And I said, no, we're fine. And he said, what happened? And I said, I can't explain it. I don't know how to tell you what happened. And he said, I want to show you something. And he walked me down this is really a primitive camp. There was no like cabin or lodge there. I mean, it was primitive. We walked down to where this old boathouse building is. It looked 100 years old. And behind it, laying on the ground, is a Lund 16-foot aluminum boat upside down with a tarp over it. And he pulls the tarp off, and that's when I could see this boat looks like the whole port side of it is V'd in. Like, if you can imagine a boat sitting upright, aluminum boat, and somebody hitting it with a motorcycle doing like 60 mile an hour, how you just cave in one point of that boat. That's how this boat looked. And I said, what happened? And he told me he was guiding a moose hunter that fall before we were there in June. This would have been in like October or so of the prior year. Right. And he said, I was guiding a moose hunter, and we had shot a moose on an island. It was on one of the islands on the lake. And they had went over and taken some pictures of him with this moose. It was right on the shoreline. And he says, I brought him back to the camp here. And then I went back myself to cape it out and quarter it and get it loaded in the boat. He was by himself. And while he was doing that, he said, I had something start screaming at me, and it came out of this tree line. And he had already had this thing quartered and had one of the quarters in the boat, like with the leg hanging up, the hoof and ankle and everything still on it, on that hind quarter. And he was going back for another one. And this thing came running out, screaming at him. He said it looked human on 2 feet, but it was way too big. He ran to the opposite side of the boat where his gun was, couldn't get to his gun right away. And this thing grabbed that quarter that was in the boat and threw it over its shoulder and was screaming as it walked back into that tree line. And he called his 2 brothers who were up there in boats somewhere else on the lake and said, I need you here right away. I need you guys to come here. And they came there. This thing, well, I forgot to tell you, this thing, when it walked up to the boat, when it grabbed that, it threw its knee into the side of this boat and caved it in. Like kneed it 4 or 5 times and caved it in. So he calls his brothers. They both show up, and he tells them that he was attacked by a cow moose, which will often happen up there. I mean, people don't realize this, but a cow moose will keep its its young with it for 3 years.
Yep.
A lot of times you'll see a bull moose that's fairly look kind of mature. It's still hanging out with its mom still, if it's 3 years old sometimes. And those cow moose are the most dangerous animals you can be around anywhere in the woods. It's almost worse than a grizzly bear.
Steve,
so
we got a couple of questions here. Can we? I know we're going to go over a little bit.
Yeah.
Can we get to these questions? You think?
Yep.
Or shall we just? What do you think?
And Jeff, thank you for sharing that story.
Yes,
An
sir.
amazing story.
Yeah.
Sasquatch Wizard Adirondack said, Jeff, it's amazing you lived to tell us this. He said, to be that close to one. He said, what did it smell like? Was its skin like gritty frostbite dirt? Was its fingernails black?
I didn't smell anything. And the other thing is I don't remember any vocalization. I was really confused in trying to figure out how it got from A to B, from where I heard it break something to where it's standing in front of me. Like, how did it move from there to there without cracking branches and leaves? And, it was really puzzling to me how I wouldn't have heard anything and how it got to where it was. But it could be that visually I was so stimulated. I've talked to Leon Thompson about this. I was so visually stimulated that when I say I didn't smell anything or I didn't hear anything, it may just be that my visual senses were so firing so hard that I just didn't notice that stuff. Maybe it did grunt and I didn't notice it. I don't know.
Yeah, it seemed like everybody in the boat had a good case of PTSD going there.
Well,
after that experience.
So this guy, when he shows me this, I asked him, what did your brothers say? They got there and they bought his story that this was a cow moose until they realized he was missing one of the hindquarters.
Right.
And so he told them the truth about what happened. And one of his brothers believed him and one of his brothers didn't. And to that day, still didn't. And he said, I'm going to give you some advice. Never talk about this to anybody. Figure out a way to mentally get to where you were before this happened, because nothing good will ever come of sharing this with anybody. And that was his experience. He had one brother who believed him and one who didn't. And those 3 are alone out there in the wilderness their whole lives. To have one of your brothers not believe you, that had to have been crushing to him, So, of course, his advice to me is don't ever tell anybody,
Right.
But
But eventually you found the right community to do it to. And that's huge and important for people to, eventually get out of, that horrible feeling of keeping that story in.
Well,
And,
one of the interesting things, this is kind of the thing that really was the mind blower to me of talking to this guy, was he said, "Where were you when this happened?" And I said, "I was on Patton Island." Now, here's the deal. That map showed Patton Island, and it said Patton Island on it. The little island that's only 30 acres next to Patton Island to the northeast or northwest of it didn't have a name. But I figured if I told him Patton Island, he'd at least know where I'm talking about, right? So I said, "I was on Patton Island." He goes, "My experience was near there. It wasn't on Patton Island. It was the little island to the northwest of it."
oh, God,
And I was
there you
like,
go.
holy smokes.
Information. Yeah.
Yep. And Helton just points out that perhaps the reason why you didn't hear that one move was because there was two of them.
It could be. I really do believe that it was using that island to hunt. As many big game animals as we had seen swimming from island to island, you might have to sit on that little island for a couple days before one actually swims to your island. But with the elevation in the middle of the island, you're going to see it coming from a long ways away. And when any animal swims up on that shoreline, it's exhausted. It shakes that water off, and you can step right out of them trees and break its neck and be done. There is no chasing. There's nothing to happen there. That animal's exhausted. Whereas on the mainland, if you're a 1,000-pound, 9.5-foot tall creature, I don't care how fast or strong you are. If you think you're going to chase down a deer and catch it, that's a lot of work, man.
That's right.
So to think they may use these islands to like ambush hunt from, it made sense to me that maybe that's what it was doing there.
And that is some good, abstract pre-planning thought that we're sure they're capable of doing, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, well, guess what time it is, Chris?
Yeah,
And
I know.
again, Jeff, thank you so much for telling us that story.
Yeah.
And we got the questions out that we needed to get out.
Yeah. Great encounter. Wow.
Yeah. So, anyway, any parting thoughts before we go tonight?
My only parting thought would be good to each other, man. Be good human beings.
That's it. All right, Chris, do your thing, brother.
Yeah. Well, again, I want to thank Jeff for coming on with us and sharing this awesome encounter. We appreciate you and the insightful discussion. I love this. Every time you're great. One of my favorite guests. Okay. All right, for everybody over there in the chat, man, we appreciate you guys. You're the greatest audience in Bigfooting, bar none. You're great. We love you. Greatest questions. If it's your first time watching tonight on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe, like, do all the little button pressing over there. If you haven't, made it to the YouTube channel yet, if you're listening on one of the podcast streams, come on by at Squatch-D TV on YouTube and check out some of the video features. And I'm sure you will like some of the stories, the videos and stuff that Steve's been putting up lately. But thank you guys.
We're going to be doing some more. In case you haven't caught it, we got we are completing the John Green series on the short side of things. Some great snippets of the John Green interview I did many, many years ago, back in 2007, when John Green was alive. Obviously, not talking him from beyond the grave. But check that out. Well, we have some more stuff coming this week. We have another great story coming out this week. That'll be on Thursday as we do our Thursday stories. And folks, Wednesday, well, for the members, we'll be doing that fun seminar on the Miller Doc. In case you don't know what the Miller Doc is, Google it, see what comes up, see what you think, and then wait for the results on Wednesday if you don't know what the results are. But for me, everybody, again, be good to yourselves. Jeff makes a great message there. Want to wish everybody a happy and safe, healthy week. We will catch you all this coming Friday night, 9 p.m. on the Bigfoot News. And hopefully we'll have some more interesting stories there. But folks, we'll catch you all next week. You know, have a great week. Stay healthy. God bless. And we'll keep on squatching, folks. Catch you all in a bit.
We thank you for being here with us on Squatch-D TV. If you haven't taken the time yet, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And oh yes, hit that notification bell too. We don't want you to miss anything. If you really like our content, you should consider becoming a member. And it's really inexpensive and a great way to support not only the show, but honest Bigfoot research. Everyone have a great week. Be safe and God bless. We will see you all here next time on Squatch-D TV. Keep on squatching.